Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Bitwig Studio and Music Production. This is lesson 2.30, and this is our conclusion and recap of section 2. The first thing I wanted to do is just extend a very special thank you to everybody who's been watching these videos and has said very kind words. It really means a lot, and I'm just trying my best to help you guys create interesting music. And I think DJing counts as creating interesting music. So that's been my goal from the very beginning. I just want you guys to have some of the tools and the knowledge that's going to help you and push you to create something. And I know personally how difficult that can be sometimes where you're soaking in all this knowledge, but you're really struggling to open up the software and actually commit some things and try to create things and finally finish them. So this has been just as much a very positive experience for me as I hope it has been for at least one or two of you out there watching. So that was the first thing I wanted to say. Second thing I wanted to say is I know that if you're watching this video, you're consciously making that choice. It's not like you've searched something in YouTube and then one of my videos has just popped up and you clicked on it. Like I said before with the section 1 conclusion, you're going out of your way to watch this, and that really does mean a lot to me, and I'm very thankful and happy that you've made that decision. So let's just go ahead and jump into everything here, beginning with our recap. So it took a long time, but we finally opened up Bitwig. We finally installed it onto our computer, set up our audio preferences, talked a little bit about audio interfaces, MIDI controllers, that sort of thing. And then we started bringing some full-length tracks inside of Bitwig Studio and started where I really think it's important to start, and that's with song analysis. We may not cover a more important topic throughout the entirety of these lessons than song analysis, because if you're interested in a particular genre of music, you need to understand why it is you're interested in that. Not just that it sounds cool or that you like it, but really think about why you like it and analyze those tracks as deeply as you want. Understand all the different sounds, the transitions, the thing that you may really like about the genre you may not have expected when you started to sit down and do that song analysis. And so we looked at specifically the arrangements and how you can set cue points and cue markers to help you and to see and visualize what's going on. But also I said it might be helpful to take one step further and to jot down some actual notes and try to understand why it is you like something. Then we moved into the realm of the DJ and DJing. And I believe we defined a DJ as anybody who plays back music, plays back pre-recorded music. And so that's a pretty all-encompassing definition. It means almost everybody is a DJ to some degree. Even, a 4-year-old kid who has an iPhone and can choose when to skip or when to stay on a track. We're all DJs to some degree, and it's really kind of inherent to us as to what sounds good and what we like. And so it only makes sense that we would want to combine some of those tracks together and then create a pretty seamless mix. And by the end of section 2, that's what we were able to do. So we looked at hardware, we looked at very dedicated specific software like Tractor, and then we looked at Bitwig, which is a software that may not really be designed for DJing, but we can accomplish pretty much the same result with it. And I hope out of all of those videos you understood that all three of these mediums, the hardware, the dedicated software, and then Bitwig, can do the same thing. It's just all about the way in which they go about doing it. And so in Bitwig, it required a little more work for us to set it up. But by the end, we were able to, have the same sort of flexibility that you have in something like Tractor. Just looks a little bit different and the controls are a little bit different. So the next area we're going to be moving into is kind of the real meat of this course and really where it's going to get a little bit crazy and we're going to be having a lot of fun creating different things. And I've just called it the creation segment. But at the same time, I think section 1 and section 2 are both great resources and knowledge to have under your belt before moving forward. It also means just because we won't be talking about DJing specifically, at least the way we've talked about it here in this very introductory sort of way, it doesn't mean you should ignore it and move on. If anything, it means that as we start talking about creation, at least creation from a very kind of raw, blank canvas sense, you should take some of those skills that you're going to learn and apply it to the DJing and kind of apply it back to what we talked about in section 1, the foundations of sound and audio and timbre, harmonics, frequency, and amplitude, right? All of those topics, suddenly the things that we're going to talk about are going to make sense in relationship to those fundamentals. And so when we start getting a little crazy and making complex effects devices, all of that, you can apply that to your live performance and apply that to your DJing, and it's all going to make sense. And so I hope you realize that there is a logic for the way I'm trying to structure this out. It may not be apparent to you right now, but when we move forward and start doing things, suddenly I hope you're going to get some of those clicks in your brain. So let's do a little bit of a DJ review and talk a little music philosophy or DJ philosophy. And I started this with song choice, and I think the best DJs, or at least the ones I really appreciate, are the ones who can take just 2 decks, a mixer, and really sort of create a story and set a mood. And that's why I reference the set as a whole, the set as just an entity in and of itself. It's very easy to listen to a DJ set that makes you feel a certain way. If you're feeling maybe a little down and depressed, you can make a DJ set to really reflect that and really go as deep as you want to go. Conversely, if you're really happy and really jazzy and you want people jumping up and down, you can do that too. Really, the sky is the limit when it comes to DJing, and that's what's so amazing about it and what people really take for granted. And I kind of use this analogy where you think of one song, it kind of equals a short story. So you have to introduce your characters, get to the heart of the conflict right away, and then either resolve it or don't resolve it. Leave it kind of open-ended so that the listener is asking more questions than when they came in. Whereas an album is really a full novel. You have time to develop those characters, to push that story in different ways, to introduce some twists and turns, and then hopefully at the end come to some kind of resolution. It doesn't have to be concrete, but it does have to resolve in some way. You know what I mean? Like that tension that's all been building has to come to resolution. And a lot of the albums that come out today are really not based like a novel anymore. They really kind of are based on the principle of singles, and all of those tracks are really independent. But you think of some great albums, 70s, 80s, 90s, and even today there are some good ones, just not necessarily by pop singers. They really do tell a story and they really paint a picture in your brain, and it's such a great experience to sit down and listen to full albums, which we do so rarely nowadays. And then for me, I look at a DJ set as an encyclopedia, not necessarily something dry and boring like you'd assume an encyclopedia is, but really just as a mash of tons and tons of albums or of short stories. Because with a DJ set, we don't have to just pull from one album. We don't have to just pull from one artist. We don't have to just pull from one style, one genre, anything like that. We can pull from anything. And that's why I look at it more like an encyclopedia, dictionary, because those ingredients we have are really limitless. And that's what's so phenomenal about a really good DJ set, is when you find somebody who's pulled out all these obscure things all over the place and has put them together and really baked just a great tasting cake, if that makes any sense at all. So I said this, the flow of a DJ set should mirror the flow of a track or the flow of an album. And we've talked about this before, really kind of looking at things on a micro level and then expanding. So you think about one track, and within any given track, there's going to be different parts. That's what we've talked about with the arrangement. So there might be an introduction, the bass line might come in, suddenly the lead is booming in, maybe there's vocals, but at some stage there might be a breakdown. And we might just have some really lush sounding pads, and then suddenly that tension is building and you're waiting for the drop to come back in. Right? So there is this kind of storyboard-esque flow inside of one track, but then within a really good crafted album, you're going to see a similar type of flow. Some tracks are going to have more energy, some are going to have less, some are going to build that tension, and some will release it. And so a DJ set does the exact same thing. So you're going out even another level, even further out, if we're looking at it from micro to macro levels. And so I think a DJ set should do kind of the same thing, if at all possible, right? You should have kind of that introduction. You should build up a lot of tension. You should release it. And you have so many songs and tools and effects at your disposal to be able to do that. And the great thing about a DJ set is that you can convey the feelings and emotional turbulence of an album, but you can do it so much quicker. Not only just maybe within a span of 10 minutes, but also the amount of prep time and work that it goes into crafting a really good DJ set. You can do a lot quicker than crafting like a really good album that might take 1 or 2 years. And in my opinion, DJing should be considered just as valid an art form as any other that we're going to encounter, whether that's in the musical domain, in a studio arts domain, in a filmmaking domain, etc. I think DJing is right up there because a great DJ has the ability to do what a great producer or what a great recording artist can do. So obviously you have to practice. You're not going to be good at DJing overnight, and it's always great to keep it simple at the start. So if you've never DJed before in your life, if you've never made a mix before in your life, that's totally okay because we all start there. We all start with having never done it before. You know, it's not like you're born with that innate skill to do it. However, you are born with kind of an innate ear for music. So what I would always recommend is keep it very simple at the start. You know, analyze songs, see, oh my gosh, this song has a 16-bar drum outro. This other song has a 16-bar drum intro. What happens if I start the drum intro from my second track right when my first track is hitting that outro and just kind of mix it there? And you hear how that works and whether or not it works very well. And then you say, maybe I could start it a little earlier. Maybe I could start it in the breakdown of track 1. And then when we get to track 2, you know, I'll kill the lows, I'll kill the mids, or I'll just slam the fader over to the other side. In this course, I'm not really giving you guys specific what's. You know, I'm not saying this is what you have to do because there is nothing that you have to do. You have to experiment. You have to take some of these very basic tools I'm giving you and kind of make with them what you will. It's so easy nowadays to go on YouTube and to search for a how can I do this or what do I do when situation. But really, I don't think that's the way to go about it at all. I think you have to sit there and you have to experiment and you have to listen and see, oh, this works. You know, this works 90% of the time. This works 40% of the time. This little transition works 1% of the time. But it's that 1% of the time that makes or breaks your DJ set. So just make sure that you're going to learn how to walk before you can run. It's not going to make a whole lot of sense to go for a super complex and technical routine if you can't make an interesting long hour set with just 2 decks and an EQ. So start there, whether it's in Bitwig or Tractor or on hardware, you know, keep it very, very simple. And once you master the simple stuff, you can start building on that and building and building and building. But if you skip over that first step, as you're building, you're just going to become more and more confused, and I think your sets will probably suffer because of it. So when you're performing live, and even just when you're practicing, embrace the mistakes and just go with them. So with my last set, the one that I've uploaded to SoundCloud, I didn't go into my arrangement and make that many changes. I really just kind of faded out the end of the track so that it didn't end abruptly. But other than that, you know, I made a ton of mistakes, and I went back and kind of listened to some of it, and I was like, oh my gosh, you know, there's some train wrecky moments in here. However, I'm still very proud of what I was able to accomplish and that I was able to perform it. You know, it's easy for people to be critics and to say, oh, it's train wreck in here. You know, this sounds terrible. But you know what? Could they do any better? Or they're the ones listening to it. Maybe they should go out and do it. But most really, really harsh critics are very rarely the doers in anything. So, you know, take the criticism because it's probably valid, but just know that you have actually created something and they probably haven't. So don't worry too much about making those mistakes. We learn from our mistakes, obviously, and I think sometimes those mistakes can turn around and be kind of a great moment if everything else goes according to plan, of course. So some pros of working with Bitwig in a DJ context, I would say flexibility, number one. You know, we can start totally blank and we can build up our EQs and we can build up our effects however we want, where in other softwares, we just simply can't do that. Going right off that is creativity for the same reason. We can bring in as short of loops we want. We can bring in as long of loops we want. We have the ability to trigger more than just 4 tracks at any given moment. And so often DJs are limited by their 4 decks and their mixer. which in my opinion is still a great limitation, but maybe we want to do something more than that. Maybe we want to make a Medean style pop culture mashup, right? Well, we're probably going to need more than 4 clips playing at once. And Bitwig is going to give us that ability where most other software isn't, or hardware especially. And the other thing I think that's great about working with Bitwig is the patience and the time it takes to actually create your set. A lot of people may be shaking their head right now, but really, I can say that from spending so many hours just kind of stretching tracks and finding loops, I learned a lot about Bitwig just from sitting inside of the software for so long and kind of repeating those steps over and over again. And I think it really has helped me trying to understand the logic and how the software works. So the cons of working with Bitwig in a DJ context, right now I can only think of one, and that's just those sort of basic, annoying little bugs that are associated with the new software. So for me, the biggest issue has been trying to deal with those like pops and clicks that seem to happen just totally inexplicably. Also, not being able to fine tune the tempo. Those are probably my only 2 complaints, but even so, I recognize that it's a new software and I'm fine with it. And that leads me on to my next point, which is use what you have. So if you don't have the money for a 4-deck, expensive Pioneer setup, or you don't have the money to spend on Tractor, my whole point of showing you what I've shown you in this section is that you can use Bitwig to do the exact same thing. And it may not be designed for DJing exclusively, and it's really not. However, the fact that we can still take this software and use it for the purpose of DJing and use it exactly like we could use Tractor is really mind-blowing and profound. So if you buy a piece of software, I always say use it for all it's worth, not just, and now in bunny ear quotes, what it's good at. People always ask the question, what is this particular software strength as opposed to this other software strength? Don't look at it like that. Always look at it in terms of how flexible is this and what can I do? And one of the reasons we're working with Bitwig is because, with time, it's supposed to be the most flexible audio tool ever invented. So if we can DJ with it now and we can also create really interesting music, that's great. And perhaps there's other things we'll be able to do with it in the future. So when you have the money to blow on a MIDI controller, for all means, go ahead and do it. But if you don't focus on what you do have right now, you're going to be in trouble. You're not going to be able to make interesting sets. So I think, if all you have is your laptop and you don't have anything else, that's still fine. You need to master how to use the laptop and not just think about, oh, I wish I had this or I wish I had that. That would make me a great DJ. Unfortunately, it doesn't really work like that, and it's going to require just as much hard work at each stage as you progress. So you're going to have to spend a lot of times working with the computer, and then when you get a MIDI controller, you'll have to spend a lot of time working with the MIDI controller, etc., etc. And so in this digital age, and this kind of goes off that last statement, limitations and constraints are proving to be the artist's best ally, meaning that even think about in Bitwig right now, there are hundreds and hundreds of presets. There are hundreds and hundreds of sample files. There's so much that our choices are unlimited. And as an artist, you think, oh, that's great. I have as many choices as I ever want. However, it can really kill you because you never actually sit down and create anything because you're too busy trying to explore and pick through all the choices. And for art, that can be really, really tough. So I hope you realize that if, for example, right now you don't have the latest MIDI controller or you don't have the latest plugin, that's okay. Because if you can really learn how to master what you have right now, you're going to be just as good as anybody who does have that latest software or latest plugin. And I've said it once, I'll say it again. Interesting music is interesting music. And it's really that simple. And I just want to use this example because in these videos I tend to use kind of the studio arts examples a lot. And I'm going to make the analogy one more time. People have been drawing with a pencil and paper for a very long time. And people have continued to paint just basic oil painting on canvas, even today. And why is it that people are still drawn to those particular mediums and to using those materials when they could do so many other things? And I think the reason is because it is such a limiting and it's such a constraining field. You think about it, if all I'm limited to is paint and canvas, that's pretty lame when I could have all these other fun things to do. I could work with multimedia or, I could work with sound, for example. But some people are still drawn down that road and down that route to just working with a few colors and a piece of canvas. And those limitations and those constraints are what make those artists so interesting and so unique, because they learn how to use their tools in their own creative way. And a lot of times in music production, which is really becoming the new kind of painting on canvas or becoming the new drawing, because it is so easy and so accessible to so many people, you also have to try your best to dumb it down and to limit yourself. And that's going to be a major theme in section 3 when we start working on creation. But our focus is going to be creation. So all the time we're going to be doing projects and ideas and just new compositions, because creating is what's important. It's not about understanding and saying, oh my gosh, look, I can create this crazy parallel compression, distortion, EQ, delay, reverb. That would be a lot of fun. And at times we might do something and create a very complex effect. But it does have to serve a creation as a whole. And I think if you're just starting out, or if you've been doing this for a very long time, looking at the way we're going to move forward might be very refreshing, because I'm not going to focus on perfection. I'm not going to focus on mixing or mastering for quite a long time. Instead, we're going to focus on trying to make full pieces. So pieces of music that are interesting and that, is something that you can be proud of. Even if you don't like it so much, the fact that you've created it from start to finish is something to be proud of. And that's where I'm going to leave you guys in this video and in this section. So thank you so much for watching, and you will catch me again when we start up section 3. Take care.